What's up everyone, I'm Gooshy, and in this video we're going to be going over the most overpowered melee build. With this you can basically one-shot anything in the game, even mini bosses like the cyber psychos. And you'll be doing a crazy amount of damage at like 350k and clearing groups of enemies as fast as possible. So with that, let's get started. To let you guys know, all this gameplay is on very hard difficulty, so this will work basically anywhere. And so basically there's three main components that make up this build: a specific weapon, a specific skill in the blade skill tree, and a piece of cyberware. So in this video I'll be going over these three things that you absolutely need for this build, and the rest of the things are not needed but will push your damage even further. So for the weapon that we'll be using is the Satori. This is an iconic weapon that reduces base damage but increases crit damage significantly. You can get this weapon during the main quest of the heist in the beginning of the game, or if you missed it, there is a way to get back into the building to get it again. If you don't know how, I'll link a video down in the description. And so the base stats on the Satori are just alright, but to really maximize your damage, you want your crit damage and crit chance to be as high as possible. And to do that, we need to level up our crafting skill. So the first attribute I maxed out is the technical ability. With the max level crafting, you're going to need Grease Monkey to craft epic items, and Edge Runner Artisan to craft legendary items. You can copy the skills that I got here. Most of them are just minor benefits, which reduce the cost of crafting or give you a chance to craft an item for free. But the most important ones that you need are Cutting Edge, which will increase all damage related stats to craft weapons by 5%, and Field Technician, which will give a 5% increase to damage for all crafted weapons. And again, the reason why crafting is so important is to increase the DPS for Satori and to get the exact stat rolls that you want. And the main thing that you want is an increase to crit chance. Here I got an increase of 65%. This, along with the other stats, which I'll get to later on in the video, will bring our crit chance up to 100%. As a side note, the way that you can calculate your crit chance and crit damage is by adding the stats while hovering over your weapon while you have it equipped, plus the stats in the character menu. If you want to understand a little bit more, I'll link another video in the description below where Z Karma goes in depth into how stats are displayed within game. To take the crit damage even further, I included 3 Scourge mods, which will increase crit damage by 10% each, which you can get from the melee weapons vendor right by your apartment. Alright, on to the second thing that's absolutely needed for this build, and this is the skill in the blades tree called Offense Defense. This states that defensive attacks with blades deal 300% more damage, and I'm not sure if this is a bug or not, but this procs every single time. If you want an in-depth explanation, I'll link another video in the description below by Moxie, who I'm pretty sure found this out. Credit where credit's due. I definitely couldn't have got all this information by myself. And since this skill procs every single time you get a hit, this will definitely bring your damage up by a considerable amount. I think when I first tried this, my damage went up from 10,000 to 50,000. So again, this is the major skill that you need, and I'll quickly go over the other skills that I have that help with this build either for utility or damage. So for damage, we need Float Like a Butterfly, which will increase blade damage by 50% for 5 seconds after dodging. Next, we need Roaring Waters, which have strong attacks with blades dealing 50% extra damage. The Blessed Blade, which will increase our crit chance by 20%, bringing our total so far up to 85% crit chance. And finally, we have Judge, Jury, and Executioner, which will increase blade damage by 100% against enemies with max health. Next, we have utility stuff like Flight of the Sparrow, which will reduce stamina costs for blade attacks, and Death Bolt, which will restore 20% health, and more importantly, increases movement speed by 30% after defeating an enemy. So to take full advantage of all our damage perks, the basic game loop is to first dodge to get a 50% damage buff. Then we want to be using heavy attacks for the 50% buff from Roaring Waters, and to scale the damage multiplier for Judge, Jury, and Executioner by 100%. Again, all attacks will be considered defensive attacks, and on top of that you'll be getting a 300% increase. Also in the athletic skill tree, I have my body level up to 9 to get health regen during combat, increase max health by 30%, and most importantly Steel and Chrome, which will increase melee damage by 20% after maxing it out. Finally, the last part that's most important for this build is the cyberware Sandevistan. To get as much damage as possible, I use the Quaint Warp Dancer, which will only slow down time for 8 seconds, but gives it increased crit damage to 50%. It also increases crit chance by 10% when Sandevistan is active, which brings our total up to 95% crit chance. And the reason why this is so important is not for the crit damage, but is more for survivability. Especially on very hard difficulty, 2 shots is basically enough to take you down. So I use this Sandevistan just for the sake of getting that high damage number. But what I actually recommend is going for another Sandevistan that has a longer slowdown time. So I've been using this Dynalure Sandevistan MK3, which will slow down time by 50% for 16 seconds and has a way lower cooldown at 15 seconds. To take your survivability even further, I added a mod which will increase the time that enemies take to notice you by 70%. If you can get these Sandevistan neurotransmitters, you can increase your crit damage even more by 15%. A couple of other cyberware that will increase our crit damage is the Visual Cortex support, which will increase crit damage by 45%, but you need an intelligence of 16. Finally, the last way you can increase this crit damage even further is by clothing mods. The bully mod, which I equipped here, will increase crit damage by 20%. I only added one bully mod, so it's possible to get even larger damage numbers if you equip more mods to different pieces of clothing. And there's one way I didn't get to increase damage even more, and that is to get the last skill in the blade skill tree, which has a requirement for you to be at blades level 20, but will increase crit damage by 25%. Again, this much crit damage is kind of overkill, and most enemies go down in like 3,000, 4,000 damage, with tankier enemies going down in like 10k. And even the cyber psychos, they just take like 100k to take down. So all this crit damage isn't needed, but it's kind of cool to see how far we can get this damage up to. With that, that's everything you need to know about the 300k damage build. If you found anything in this video helpful, please drop a like. I'm going to leave some gameplay rolling of me clearing out some NCP areas. As always, thank you guys for watching. Hope to catch the next one, and GG.